Chapter 26. Heather, POV. Morgan had been so tired, and he could not say thank you enough once we got into the car to take us home. It was late, about 11 o'clock, and I'm sure that Morgan was glad it was still school break, or he would have been a mess for school in the morning. As we started to head home, the divider between the driver, Jerry, and the back of the limo was lowered.
Sorry, Heather. I just got a call. Mason needs me to pick him up. Do you mind if we swing by the Nocturnal Club and pick him up? It's not too far out of our way.
Poor Jerry. I don't know how he manages to please us all and keep that happy smile every time I see him. Not at all, Jerry. I agreed, and Jerry started to raise the divider. Leave it down. You can enjoy our banter too, if you like, I suggested. Jerry lowered it back down, and I could see his happy grin in the mirror. As we headed to pick up Mason, Jerry and Morgan had a good chuckle about boy stuff, and Morgan used the one topic he loved the most, and that was to pick on me for all the work I did, which was really, for me, a backhanded compliment. Jerry, do you know why Mason went to the club? I asked, wondering why he would go to my uncle's club. I know it's new, but it's loud and full of girls on the prowl.
I believe he was scoping out places he could take you to go to on Thursday, Heather,
Jerry said with a chuckle, most likely thinking the same thing as me.
He doesn't know Heather very well then, does he, Jerry? Or else he would know that clubs are not her style,
Morgan said before I could respond with a similar comment of my own.
He does have a lot to learn about women, in general, I think, but he is improving. He does still have areas where he is clueless, having not had to think about other people's likes and dislikes. He's taken on more of the security team, thanks to Heather, and is rarely going anywhere without 6 men at least now, which is definitely an improvement. He's trying to find places to take Heather out, but it's still a long way off on what to do with a real woman. I think the best thing you did was make him work for it, Heather. You have my respect. Don't give in to him until he proves himself. He needs to learn how to act like a gentleman. Something, I'm sorry to say, was never really taught in the castle,
Jerry says with a laugh as we got closer to the club. I heard the phone ringing and thought it was weird to use the phone and not a mind link.
Sir, we've just entered the street. We'll be there in about 2 minutes,
Jerry informs Mason.
Gee, Jerry, why don't you do mind linking?
Morgan asked the question that was on my mind.
It's too distracting when driving in this level of traffic.
Jerry was happy to reply to Morgan's constant questions. We had just stopped, and Jerry had climbed out the car. I saw Mason heading towards us, so I scooted over to give him some room to climb in, when a woman pushed past the distracted guard and jumped on Mason. He fell onto the bonnet of the car with a loud thud. The security man belatedly grabbed the woman, and he said something to Mason, then dragged the struggling woman away. After the initial shock of what had just happened, Morgan started to laugh. He knew what that meant, and I had to hold back my laugh too. Not that it was funny, but when someone else starts laughing, you can't help but join in. Jerry opened the door. He looked at me as he did and winked. He had a smile on his face as he too knew what was about to happen. I scooted to the far side of the limo, as far away from the door as possible. When Mason lowered himself to climb in, he lifted his head to the laughter with a confused look. And then you saw his face change as he looked straight into my eyes, and I raised my hand to show him one finger. His look of disappointment was evident, but he just nodded and climbed in beside Morgan as I refused to sit beside him.
Mason, if you're gonna let a woman grab you like that, you should at least find someone with better perfume. You stink,
Morgan said, waving his hand under his nose as he blew away the smell and burst out into laughter again, and we could hear Jerry making a noise in the front seat. Could you take me home first, please, Jerry? I asked politely, and he nodded. His chest kept jumping up and down as he tried to keep his laughter under control.
Oh, just wait till I get home and tell the twins about this. This will last us for at least a week. Thanks for taking me home, Heather. This has made my day,
Morgan said, and I knew what he meant. The girls are going to make this far worse than it really is. I could see the funny side, even though I did not want to. The look on Mason's face when he climbed into the limo to be with me all week, too. And for some time after that, it was a priceless look, like a child being caught with his hand in a cookie jar. The guilt for being caught was all over his stunned face. I did not say a word to Mason, and he had the good grace to sit there and say nothing. He was obviously nervous and upset as he fidgeted in his seat. Morgan climbed out of the limo first. As I climbed past Mason, he grabbed my arm, and I stopped to look at him. His face was twisted with regret. He leaned forward and kissed my cheek, before letting me go with a sad face, wishing me a pleasant night. I nodded and climbed out, thanking Jerry and whispering for him to take good care of Mason, and walked inside, to the laughter of my sisters. And I knew that Morgan must have run into the lounge and blurted out the news of what had happened to Mason.
Mason. I was lost in thought after Heather was dropped off at her home. Jerry had the good sense not to say a word. He raised the divider to give me my privacy, and in some small way I wanted him to keep it down, like he had for Heather and Morgan. The little twerp laughed all the way home, sending barbs at me and letting Heather know that the whole house would know about the incident the moment they got home. I felt for Heather. She will most likely be made fun of, or make fun of me, and she would have to accept all the barbs, while I am the lucky one. My brothers were still in the club and had not seen the unsightly incident. I got to think of a way to make it up to her. Since we met, I have gained a whole month added to our agreement, and I have not finished 1 week of the first period yet. At this rate, my brothers will be mated and have pups before I get to mate with mine. Jerry dropped me off at the front door, and somehow I managed to make it to my room without my mother knowing I had arrived home, though I am sure one of the staff would advise her. If Mother asked, they saw everything that was going on in the castle. No such thing as a secret. When a staff member is around, it is hard to even have a moment to myself without someone showing up asking if I need something, when all I want sometimes is a little peace and quiet and time alone to think. A quick shower, and I hit the sack. I was exhausted from the night out, and my ears were still ringing from the loud music, if you could call it music, that the band was playing. I don't know how I used to be able to do all of that in the past. I know for about a year now I have lost interest in clubs and picking up girls, and because of that my brothers would call me a spoiled sport. When you think about it, they have tried to bully me into being out with them for years and make me feel bad. When I said I was not interested, even tonight, I caved, because I did not want to be a mother's earpiece. I'm sure she is just lonely. Now we have all grown up and don't need her. I hope when her first grandchild arrives, she will be too busy coddling that child and annoying Sabrina to worry about us anymore. Tonight I had that awful dream again, and I was restless for the rest of the night, thinking about how I can avoid those situations in the future. It seems I need to growl at my team and possibly replace the one that failed me tonight. I should not have to worry about whether someone was going to slip past them, not when it was not that crowded. I could understand if they were stuck in a huge crowd and were overcome by too many women trying to get past, but we only had about 5 or 6 screaming out my name and telling me they wanted my baby. I expect my team to keep the crown under control. It hurt my hip when I crashed into the car, and it broke my heart when I saw my mate in the car as I climbed in, and the conflicting feelings. I was glad to see her, and then knowing she saw the whole thing made me feel sad, and it was embarrassing. I should have been able to avoid that woman, but I did not even think to watch my back. Surely that is what the team is for. I'm going to have to do more training. I've got slack over time. The daily runs and workout at the gym will have to commence again, and I will have to speak to our trainer about getting more time with him. Sykes will improve my awareness in no time. Morning came with mixed feelings. I still needed to work out where to take Heather to make up for how she found me yesterday, and that place needed to be away from the public, and any chance that I would gain another week of my ever-growing time that we must date, and the chance to take her as my mate, seemed to moving further away instead of closer, and I need to stop the direction our relationship is moving. She did not look happy to see me, and I don't blame her. How can I make it so she is yearning for me instead of still seeing me as a playboy? That title was what has been plaguing my dreams lately. Heather in the stands calling out guilty, as I am in the arena trying to prove I am not a playboy, and girls keep coming at me, touching me, trying to kiss me, and my Heather, with her hands on her hips and the disgusted look on her face as she glares down at me, surrounded by these women. I have that dream twice now, and I wake with sweat-drenched boxers and sheets, and the rest of the night is usually tossing and turning, and any chance of proper sleep gone.
28. Heather, POV. Hi, Heather. We heard you had some fun tonight. Sylvia sang at me, her face bright with amusement. Good evening. I did not expect to see you and Sheila home. I thought you were going out clubbing, I replied, avoiding any comment about whatever Morgan had said. We were just going to the nocturnal club. Wanna come? Sheila answered, and then broke out laughing again. Mom was in her usual seat, sewing something, and looked up at me at the mention of the club. She had a smirk on her face, too. No, thank you. But please, go. I heard Uncle had it all decked out nicely inside. Just the way the two of you like a club. Good night. I turned and left the room before they could say anything more. Sylvia was trying to call me back to them, but I ignored them and continued to my room. And just to be on the safe side, I locked the door. Something I rarely do, but tonight I was not interested. And I have work tomorrow. And I know unless Dad forces them, the twins won't. And I don't understand how the rest of us have chores and those two never do. After my shower, I climb into bed. I could hear them in the hallway trying to open my door and growling at me for not letting them in. I'm not sure how long they banged on my door, but I fell asleep almost immediately. It was 6 a.m. and my alarm went off, dragging me out of a sound sleep. I dreaded going to the castle and hoped the Queen would give me some good work to do today. Yesterday was a bad day, and I needed to get back to the television station offices. Dad seemed to have gotten the brunt of the work to get the next red carpet up and happening. He had done such a great job each time that the beta was expecting it all the time. I think that Dad is going to have to send some of that work back to the beta. It's not Dad's job to do. The beta's personal business work. Dumping it on us, it's not okay. While I was working for Dad, and this was going to be my main job going forward, now that I've been conscripted to the castle, Dad is going to have to review that process, and the beta needs to stop using his beta title to make Dad do stuff. I wonder if the elfin knows what the beta is doing. I'm sure he would tell the beta to do his own work and let Dad do his. Mom was in the kitchen when I made it down there to grab a quick bite to eat before Jerry arrived to take me to the castle. She turned from the stove to look at who had entered the kitchen, smiled, and turned back to the stove. She must have known it was me, but I guess she wanted to see how I was dressed. I have on skinny jeans and a pretty blouse, flat shoes, no makeup, and my hair was made into tidy braids. The braids were full of little beads. I had them threaded. I attached one strand onto a length of hair that I was going to braid with and crisscrossed around. and the beads sort of ran in and out of the braids. I like the look, and have made many different colored ones. And for the final look, one of the braids have gone to the top of my head. It keeps the hair tidy and out of my eyes. I grabbed a toasted cheese and tomato sandwich and a coffee in a travel mug. Bye, Mom. Have a good day. I'm trying to be chipper, but I think I did not do a very good job, as Mom turned to me with a frown on her face. I hope your day is better today, sweetie. Mom wished me luck, and I waved over my head at her, acknowledging that I did hear her as I left the kitchen and headed to the door. Jerry was just pulling up as I walked to the door, and I smiled to myself. He was always so punctual. He smiled as he moved around the car to open the door for me. It was slightly infectious. Good morning, Jerry. I grinned up at him and climbed into the car.
Good morning, Heather. Looking mighty fine this morning, he chirped back.
I ate my toastie and drank my coffee, asking Jerry if I could leave the coffee mug there in the car, which he agreed to and told me where the hidden space were. That I could leave things there any time. I thanked him warmly and sighed as the car approached the castle gates and my impending doom. We arrived at the castle, and just like yesterday, the Queen was waiting at the door, like yesterday, and I was already regretting arriving there. I wonder what she would do if I just didn't show up.
Morning, Heather. I like what you've done with your hair. Those beads and those braids are beautiful.
She complimented me. I was taken aback by surprise. I did not expect her to be so kind. Good morning, Your Majesty, I replied as enthusiastically as I could.
We have something different today. Come, let's go to my office.
I followed the Queen down a different long hallway, which also had family portraits on the wall, and I wondered how many generations were aligned in each hallway. At the end of the hallway was another set of double doors, not unlike the other hallway, and I was feeling a little disorientated with all these long halls and double doors at the end of them. The Queen pushed open both doors with force and marched in. The room had the beta wife, the future Queen, and a couple of other ladies. I had no idea who they were. Seated on sofas around a table with finger food and drinks on them. They seemed to just be enjoying a morning chat.
Heather, let me introduce you to my inner circle. You may already know Sabrina. This is the beta wife, Ashley, the delta wife, Jacinta, and the head warrior wife, Yvonne.
The Queen pointed to each lady, who nodded back at me at the mention of their names. Good morning, ladies, I greeted them, and moved to sit on the sofa that the Queen indicated for me to sit on, and waited for her instructions. And I felt like I was being scrutinized by those ladies in the room. It took everything in me not to squirm under their gazes.
After a rotten night, I decided to go find my father and see if he could help me with my dilemma. I really need to start heading in the right direction, or I am going to go crazy. My wolf keeps suggesting things to do to our mate, but so far none of them would be good enough, or maybe the word is acceptable for my Heather. I'm quite sure that I would find myself on my arse and most likely piss my mother off as well. If I grabbed her and dragged her to my room and then strip off her clothes and then mark and admire our beautiful mate, I would then take advantage of her and drive my hard cock deep inside her and mate with her, making her mine. However, no matter how great this sounds, it would be against her will. Though it might be an irreversible answer, according to my wolf, it is not the way I want to get mated. I want Heather to want me, and I would like that day to be special. If it takes all year, then so be it. I will get her in my bed one day, and she will be willing to want me as much as I want her. The mate bond has cemented itself inside my heart. My wolf is howling for more contact, and even though he does not understand why we have not marked our claim, he still wants me to hold her, smell her, catch glimpses of her, to know she is okay and happy. He told me the few times he has managed to talk to Heather's wolf, Sky. Sky is always giving Heather a hard time, like Ezra is to me. When I am with Heather, Her wolf Sky parades herself around in front of Ezra, posing, showing him what he is missing, taunting him. And that is part of why Ezra is getting very needy and pushing for me to take her. Sky loves the chase, and though she has made some interesting suggestions, Heather would never act on them, and is waiting to see if I can get my act together. It appears that out of the two, Heather, who is a confident, beautiful, sexy woman, and is happy in her own appearance, and does not flaunt it like many ladies can, yet her wolf is like Heather's twin sisters, and has made as many lewd suggestions to Heather as Ezra has to me, and Sky raises her nose at Ezra and flicks her tail at him in suggested ways, getting Ezra all worked up. I think when our wolves get to be together, they will have a crazy time. Ezra won't be able to control himself. His lust is so high, and I am now concerned that I would be like a schoolboy and blow my load way too soon, and have our first time done and over with before I get a chance to make Heather reach her peak. Pushing all these thoughts aside, I reached Dad's office and knocked. Dad, thankfully, is in his office with the Beta and Delta, and they had a large assorted breakfast type of food on the table. It seemed I was on time to join the relaxing time before the start of the working day. Each day they ate and talked about anything other than work together over the first meal of the day, and with these guys here, maybe I would get some good suggestions from the older, more experienced men. "Morning, Dad, David and Stephen. Do you mind if I join you this morning?" I greeted them with as much honesty as I could put in my voice. I needed them so desperately. Well, some advice and hopefully some good company. "Take a seat, son, and join us for breakfast and tell us, what have you all up so early?" Dad offered me a seat, and I happily sat in it. Before I could answer my father's question, David jumped in with a sarcastic voice. "Morning, Mason. How is the wooing going?" David asked with a snicker. "Not that good, if the reports from the nosy staff are correct," Stephen answered for me with a chuckle. "What have the staff been saying, Stephen?" Dad asked. Stephen's comment piqued Dad's interest. He rarely paid much attention to the gossip. More often than not, it was incorrect or a fabrication of some demented mind. "Mason here thought it was a good idea to join his brothers and go to the nocturnal club. At the club he was bored and just sat and watched. The good bit was when he left the club. He was walking to the waiting limo that had just pulled up when a woman broke the lines of defense and rugby tackled him, making a hard touchdown onto the bonnet of the limo," Stephen replied, bursting out into a loud belly laugh as he found it hard to tell the story and keep himself from laughter. "Are you hurt, son?" Dad interjected, looking me over for injuries, and not at all worried about the woman's side of the story. That was not something new for his boys. He wondered when the boys would stop this behavior. "That was not the good part," David joined in, chuckling along with Stephen. "Sitting in the front row of the box seat was the lovely Heather, who watched the whole tackle, and if I got the news correctly, Mason here had been handed another week in the sin bin." Stephen and David were laughing hard through the whole spiel. Dad could not help but join in with their laughter, as they used sporting comments to make it more dramatic. Being sports fans themselves, I knew Dad could picture David's commentary of how my night had ended. Once Dad got control of his chuckling, he asked the hard questions. "Oh, son, why did you go there? Heather would never want to go to the club. She's not that type of girl," Dad asked with such honesty. It almost made me fall on my knees and ask for forgiveness for doing such a stupid thing. Again, I did not need to say a word, as David answered Dad this time. "Michael used the Queen as bait to get him out of the house. With him the only one in the castle, she would have hunted him down and got in his ear about something. You know what she is like." He chuckled at my situation. "As you seem to already know my problem, how do you suggest how I can solve it? At the rate I'm going, Michael will be mated and with pups before I reach Heather's forever growing trial time to end." I was not beyond begging for help. Well, if it was me trying to woo Heather, I would take her to the zoo, or the museum, or the art show that is opening on Thursday. Those are a little more cultured than clubs, and she might actually enjoy it. David suggested, and they did not sound too bad. That art show sounds like a good idea. I was trying to think of where to take her on Thursday. We are going straight from here. Maybe I will check out what time the art show opens and take her there. Thanks, David. Finally, something I think she would enjoy. Let's hope it is not another family-owned place, or she would have already seen it all before it opened. The rest of the breakfast continued a little better, with David and Stephen no longer having fun at my expense. All the gossip about my failed attempts to woo Heather had been a little disheartening to hear, but I could not stop the gossipers, and one day it could be a much more positive type of gossip, and I would be proud to show that I had learned to be the man Heather deserved.
Chapter 30. Heather, POV. I learned the Queen's name was Alice, and the King was Zoran. When out of the public eyes, I could address them as that. At the moment, I was not comfortable with calling her Alice, and she did not push me to call her by her name until I was ready. The ladies were nice, and I enjoyed having breakfast time with them, being told that in the mornings the men met just like we were, and just gossiped about anything and everything, and work talk was not allowed until after our morning meal was over. And when that was over, that was the Queen's decision. No one could rush her to start her day. Soon a girl walked in and cleared the dirty dishes from the table. We all watched the Queen for her to make the next move. Everything worked under the Queen and her timetable. Heather, how did yesterday go with the computer program and the phones? Ashley asked, breaking the growing silence. The other ladies snickered at the question, which confused me a little. Was there something wrong? The tasks that were given to me were completed. The phone didn't ring once, I replied, unsure where this question was heading. No problem with the program? Jacinta asked, a shocked look on her face. No. Should it have? I was lost. It took me 6 months to master the program. Even now I still have some issues with it, Jacinta said, and I looked at her baffled. I've been using that program for over a year now, and I still can't get it right. Every time something goes wrong, I have to wait for days for someone to come and fix it, Yvonne added, sounding frustrated over the mention of the program. Heather, dear, you have no issues with the program? The Queen asked with a surprised look on her face. Not really. I've been using the program for a few years now. My dad has it in his office, and I've helped my uncles get the program set up, and I showed them how to use it. When they have an issue, they give me a call and I come and fix it for them. I wondered what was wrong with the program, whether they had issues in some area in particular, or maybe it was just how they used it. Well, I didn't see any glitches in the program. It seemed to be working like it should, well, with what little time I had with it to notice any. Well, that's a bit of good news, ladies. We now have our very own expert. So when we have an issue, instead of waiting for days for someone to come and help us, we'll just call Heather. Ashley gushed with pleasure, and I suddenly wondered what I had let myself in for. The ladies all smiled at me as if they had just won the lottery, and the Queen beamed with pleasure. Excellent. One problem solved. Thank you, Heather. The Queen gushed over me as if I had just solved the world's biggest problem and thanked me. But I hadn't done anything. Today, ladies, we are going to the hospital. We are opening a new wing for the laboratory. It is for DNA collecting and sample gathering. We will be starting a new DNA-listed database, and I believe one of the doctors will be looking at the bloodlines for signs of special gifts. And if those gifts are visible in the blood, or if you can only know when a person's gift is manifested, and if that ability can be demonstrated. It sounded like gibberish to me, but maybe one of you will follow what they are trying to say once we go and meet them.
We can all have our blood taken and be the first to get our DNA done. Won't that be exciting?"
the Queen said, and I cringed at the thought of having a needle stuck in me and my blood taken. Last time I had blood taken, I was sick for days. Needles and I do not do well together. The bruises they leave on my arm stay for weeks instead of hours. We climbed into the limo, and I smiled to see that we had Jerry again as our driver. He did seem to be the preferred driver by most here, the most in demand. He was always happy and smiling, and was very courteous. I think that was why the ladies loved him. He was quick to pick up body language and softly murmured cues. The hospital was only half an hour away, and photographers and camera crews were dotted around the stage area, where the opening ceremony was going to be held. The Queen and Ashley took the lead, with Jacinta and Yvonne next, and I followed behind. Not sure what I was supposed to be doing. Sabrina did not come with us. Being pregnant with a pup, she was excused until after the pup was born. A man dressed in a suit came rushing up to us and bowed deeply at the Queen and made smaller bows to the rest of us, eyeing us with interest.
Come this way, Your Majesty. We have a place set up for you and your ladies."
He turned and walked ahead of the Queen, expecting her to just blindly follow, which, of course, she did not. The Queen stopped and greeted people who had been waiting for us to arrive, eager to see royalty, and she took the time to say hello to as many people as she could, until the man came back to her in a rush and explained that the ceremony was about to start, and her appearance was needed at the front. As a group, we followed the now annoying man and found where we were to be seated. Another man, who seemed to ooze power, took to the stage and made some kind of magnificent speech, and then called the Queen to come and cut the ribbon that had been hung across the doorway that led into the laboratory. After the applause that had erupted after the Queen cut the ribbon had died down, we were asked to follow the man into the room and take a seat and roll up our sleeves for our blood to be taken. One by one, we had our blood taken, and our names were written on the vial. The needle was as bad as I expected, and I think I must have annoyed the person who was taking my blood, as he had trouble getting the needle into my veins. In the end, he had to change the needle twice, blaming it on being blunt, and somehow managed to get a needle in successfully, taking some blood and grumbling the whole time. We had a tour of the laboratory and was given an explanation about all the different machines and what they were looking for. It was easy for me to follow, and I could see some merit in knowing if we had healers in our bloodline or some kind of elemental control. The day went quickly, and the time to head back to the castle came quicker than I expected. We all talked about the visit to the hospital, and the Queen assured us that we would get the DNA and other results in a week or so, and she was looking forward to hearing if any of us had any special gifts in our blood. By the time we arrived back at the castle, it was 2:30, and the Queen suggested I finish for the day now. Grateful not to have to linger for another half hour, I stayed in the limo and had Jerry take me to my dad's office, once the other ladies had been dropped off at the castle. This day was much better than yesterday, for a lot of reasons. And knowing that I was left alone all day yesterday was not a test, but because they thought I would have computer issues, and being left to my own devices would help me learn. Now I was promoted to the go-to person for the program for this inner group. The ladies gushed over me and tried to make me feel a part of the group, happy that I had brains and not just beauty, which made me blush. I guess with the boys' playboy reputation, they had expected their mates to be all beauty and not brains, or something like that.